I went to Florida in 2012 for my first real treatment center. I went out to rehab. I did well for like 45 days. While I was in Florida, that was the first time I started, IVing substances. My addiction progressed massively. I wasn't at an all-time low yet, but that was where, like, all the things I said I was never going to do, it ended up happening.
Welcome back to the Locked In with Ian Bick podcast. On today's episode, we have Will Milligram to share his story of battles with addiction, what it was like to be homeless on the streets of New Jersey, the near-death experiences he encountered along the way, and how he was able to overcome it. Guys, folks, everyone that tunes into this show, we now have new merch in stock. Go to ianbick.com to check out our selection of hoodies, t-shirts, and beanies just in time for the holiday season. You can use code LOCKEDIN at checkout to receive 10% off your order. That's code LOCKEDIN at checkout. I want to give a big thanks to all of our viewers and listeners that not only tune in week after week, but also tell their friends, their family, their coworkers about the podcast and help get the word out there. It means the absolute world, and I wouldn't be here without you guys. Remember, you can help support this show by hitting the subscribe button on YouTube or giving us a follow and leaving us a review on whichever site you listen to this podcast. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with Will Milligram. Will, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You're,
of course, buddy.
You're local to the area.
Yes, moved to Danbury like 3 years ago now.
Why Danbury? That's such a random place.
Well, I grew up in Brewster, right over the border. And when I was looking for an apartment, I'm like, oh, it's cheaper in Danbury. I can get it was a little more affordable. So at that time, I was just getting sober, my first apartment, and it went good, man. It actually was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, and Danbury is actually a good location because it's, an hour from New York City. You got Stamford nearby. You got Norwalk.
That's
right.
It's
not bad, but no one really knows of Danbury, which is crazy.
I mean, they know of it from the Trashers and all that stuff, but that's about it.
Shout out to AJ Galante. Yeah, he was on the show a couple months back, and we're going to be launching his Danbury Trashers podcast in our studio here, which is cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, let's dive into the reason why we're here today. Your story, incredible story.
Thank you.
You've gone through a lot in your life at a young age.
I have.
And those are the stories that are most inspiring because you were able to overcome that. Let's take it from the top. Going back to early childhood, where did you grow up? Where did you come from? What's that early childhood like?
So I'm from Brewster, New York, pretty basic family. My dad worked all the time. My mother actually works in the substance abuse industry. So from an early age, I was always involved with, I'd go to work with my mom every now and then. I'd see the patients, and I didn't understand it at a young age, but as time went on, my behavior started to change at a very early age. Like 4, 5, 6, I had like very obsessive behaviors, you know what I mean? And those behaviors were warning sign number 1. And for me, I didn't notice it. Nobody else noticed it, and I mean, it was tough because, addiction and mental health runs in my family, and my mother has had her issues in the past, but thank God she's doing incredible. She's great. And I was around 11, I think around 10 or 11 years old, my mother and father decided that, they were going to go their separate ways. And that's what truly set things off for me. They got divorced, my whole life. It was pretty much everybody, a lot of chaos in my family. My mother's Italian and my dad has Russian and German in him. So it was very hectic. All the holidays, I was drinking at a young age, it was definitely exciting to say the least. But as time went on, I learned that I could deal with all my issues through a drink or a pill. At 13 years old, I ended up breaking a bone in my back.
Wow.
And snowboarding. And I got prescribed Oxycontin at 13 years old. And from there, the first day I'll never forget, I was like hysterically crying. You know, I got brought to the hospital. They gave it to me, and within the matter of a second, my whole body just settled. I stopped crying, and I was home. You know, like I was like, oh my God, this is how I want to feel forever. Come to find out, it would be what completely broke me years down the line. But, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, for me, it took a while to realize and accept like what was happening. You know, I mean, I was spiraling very quickly, and I didn't have anybody saying, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. You know, hey, you're going down the wrong path. And, you know, by the time, you know, all through high school, same thing, partying every single night. You know, I started getting into extracurricular activities, making money, and, you know, wrecking cars every other week. I literally, to this day, I've had 15 cars, and I'm 31 years old.
Oh, you were that kid in high school.
I was that kid, you know.
We hated those types of kids in high school that always got the
Dude,
brand new car and then
it wasn't
smash
new
it.
cars. They were more just, you know, I would always be on the go. I worked a lot, and I'd always get like a little Rice or Honda or whatever. And then within the matter of, you know, a week or two of owning it, I would have crashed it.
You go to like those car meets and stuff at Starbucks?
I used to when I was young, you know, and that brought a lot of trouble for me too, you know.
Were you popular, or were you the bullied, or maybe even the bully?
So when I was growing up, like when I was in like middle school and stuff, I was bullied often. You know, I have big ears, I have a big nose, and you know, nowadays I'm proud of who I am. But growing up, that was a very, you know, it was a tough thing because, you know, I didn't have the courage to like defend myself when I was younger like that. And as time went on, I was like, you know what? Like I found out one day, I was like, I know how to fight. You know, like we were locker boxing after a lacrosse game. And then from that day, I'll never forget, like, you know, that whole scenario shifted, and I became the person that was like always looking for a fight, always picking a fight, causing a problem. You know, and that goes back to the behaviors, you know, at a young age, like things that normal kids, like, you know, I was never normal. There was no normalcy in my life, ever, you know. And as time went on, you know, I wouldn't say I was never like a bully, because I was always the one like trying to, like, I had a lot of friends in school that had special needs, and like I was close with them. Like I'd try to, in a way, like I'd want to protect them, you know, and it sometimes it ended up being a flaw, like causing more problems for me, because I'd end up getting suspended for something that had nothing to do with me, but I, you know, involved myself. You know, I'd went and defend some, you know, for somebody else that couldn't defend themselves, you know. And
who do you think you were closer to, your mother or your father?
It's a good question, man. I mean, when I was younger, it was my mother, but when my mother and father got separated, you know, my dad moved to Mayapack, and at that time, I think he had a fear that he wasn't going to have us as much, or maybe whatever. So like he would allow us to party. My dad was like the cool dad, you know? So as time, you know, as I got into my teens and my 20s, my dad definitely was like my rock. You know, he really helped me out a lot, like with legal troubles. He's seen me, he pretty much might as well have like been my running buddy, but he doesn't, you know, use drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, he used to think he was doing anything in his power to help me or protect me, but really it was just like enabling the crap out of me, like, you know.
Looking back on it now, do you put blame on their divorce for a lot of the things that would occur?
I mean, at one point I did, but today I take ownership, you know, and it's not that like their divorce caused me to go do what I was doing, or, you know, it's not that. I think that at a young age, a child doesn't know how to handle that, you know, and I think it definitely played a big role into why I was rebelling and doing things that I was told not to do and whatnot, but I don't necessarily think that that's like the sole cause.
You think you were rebelling to get your parents' attention because they were focusing on their relationship and not on you?
Very much so, you know, and it was almost like a cry for help without a cry for help. You know what I mean? Like I was almost, you know, and So like, this is kind of weird, and to this day, like, I'll never forget it. So I believe that I had these, tendencies, like these behaviors. I think I had them from the start, like from when I was a baby. I remember one day being as tall as the arm of the couch, in my living room. And my dad was sitting on the couch, and like an intervention show was on the TV, and I was in there, running around. And I remember, I watched a woman who was using narcotics on the show, and I had this feeling in my stomach when I was watching it, and I was like, Dad, have I ever done that? Have I ever tried that? And he was like, no. He was like, what are you talking about, But come to find out, 10 years later, the feeling that I would get when I would be on my way to pick up substances, or when I would just get what I needed and know that I was going to go get to use or get high, that was the same feeling that I got watching that show 10 years prior. You know what I mean? So I believe that, and there's a lot of like science out there, but I believe addiction is like, it's genetic, and it also, environment plays a huge role. I think that some people are born with it,
So it needs to be like triggered though. Like you could be born with it.
Spot on.
And then
dude.
something triggers, like in your case, the divorce and the accident.
Correct.
And something that's reoccurring on the show is I've interviewed a lot of people that have suffered through addiction, and reoccurring themes are an accident where they get prescribed specifically, pain meds, and then a divorce. And those are both, like, when those are put together, in your case, it's kind of a recipe for disaster.
100%.
Did you have aspirations at all before this kind of like starts to go down south?
Yeah. I was very passionate about like cars, bikes, like that was my thing when I was young. And I always wanted to have my own shop. I always wanted to be my own boss growing up. I started a landscaping business when I was like 9 years old, and would cut all the lawns in the neighborhood, and it was more of a, it's crazy how powerful, like, your environment and like the quality of life it takes all that away. Like, at one point I was so driven and like wanted to retire everybody in my family, and, and thankfully that does come back. But once I found substances, nothing else mattered. You know what I mean? Like it changed me as a person,
You ever sit back and think about those times of what you could have been before addiction took over? Like sometimes I'll think, like with the club, I'm like, I have these flashbacks and I'm like, this could have went so differently. Like it could have been something, and it hurts, and it makes you sad when you think about it. So what is like that feeling for you?
I'll tell you what, man, like weirdly, I believe that like the path that we take, bad or good, it doesn't matter. It's paved for us. Like even like, it's very unfortunate, that some of us have to deal with like terrible things in life. But I don't believe that I would be in the position that I'm in now if I didn't go through what I've been through. Like, as we'll get more into my story, I've spent over 3.5 years in treatment centers, and like I've been to 44 programs over the course of 15 years. And for me, I was always like a networking guy. I love talking with people. I love, figuring out people. I'm very observative. I'm always watching what's going on around me. And, I took a little piece from every single place that I've been. And like, I ended up applying that into helping other people, and I didn't even know that this was going to be my journey. To be honest, I didn't think I was going to make it past maybe 23 years old. I had full intentions on burning it and running it till the wheels fell off.
And a lot of people don't make it.
I know.
A lot.
I know.
And they don't even make it to that first facility. You've made it through dozens of facilities.
Unfortunately, I work in the space, and I do help a lot of people. My social media is, surrounded with, it's there to help people that are struggling with substance abuse and mental health. But I have a little over 50 people in the last like 5 or 6 years I've lost that were close to me due to addiction and mental health. You know, my best friend, Bruce, you know, rest his soul, but, you know, this kid was like one of the most incredible humans I think I've ever met, you know, and it's always, I feel, the people that have the most talent and you see doing the biggest things that don't make it, you know?
Yeah, that are the ones struggling inside.
Yes, you know?
I mean, we see that with actors that
100%.
we think as outsiders have everything in the world, and they're struggling internally.
That's right.
And maybe that's society not giving them the ability to speak on it, or they think it's not okay to talk about it.
Well, there's an image that people feel that they need to upkeep. Like, dude, for a long time, before like I got into social media, I was like terrified to let people know what I was dealing with, you know? And I mean, I don't want all the kids I was in high school with, a lot of them, you know, were getting married, doing this and that. And I'm still battling an opiate addiction, you know? And eventually, you know, it got to a point where there was no hiding it. You know, Will would disappear every other month. Like, I'd be all over the country, you know, going to different rehabs, doing this and that. And, you know, I got to a point where I was like, why not, like, create something with what I have, right? Like, the universe, you know, whatever it is that I believe in, you know, brought me on this path. And I'm still here. You know, I shouldn't be here with all the stuff that has happened. And, you know, I'm like, all right, like, the day I got sober, this time, December 15th of 2019, I went back to rehab for the last time. And the person that got me help was like, you got to promise me one thing. He was like, that you're going to do whatever it takes to help the next person. And when I started doing that, my whole life changed. Yeah. You know, my heart softened. Like, I started feeling again. I started realizing that, dude, I have a passion. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do literally until 4 years ago. You know, I'm 31 now. So, and in such a short period of time, so much could happen. Yeah. Like, 4 years ago, I was homeless in Newark, New Jersey, you know, begging for change at the end of the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru. But here I am today. You know, me and my best friend, our first facility rehab is opening up middle of October, you know, 4 years later.
Do you think you carry a lot of weight on your shoulders when you see all the people that do pass away from addiction and you've been able to survive and overcome that?
You know, this may sound a little tough, but I feel almost like not numb to it, but in a way, like, I'm a little hardened to it, you know, and it's not necessarily because I'm like a cold person. It's just, if I allowed, you know, it's like this problem that we're facing as a country is so serious that, like, if I let it affect me, like, it's happening every day. No joke. Every day I'm hearing people are not making it. So if I did let it affect me in like a very negative way where I lock myself in my room and, you know, and I'm not like pushing through, I think it gives me more drive to just keep helping, you know what I mean? Or to find new ways that may work for people like myself, you know, because I was, you know, what they call a chronic relapser. Like, you know, nobody thought that I was going to make it.
Yeah. So high school is where it basically starts. Do you finish high school?
I did. I graduated high school, which, to be honest, I don't think I was supposed to at all. You know, I didn't do well in school. I was never too book smart. But I did have some great, like, relationships that I built, like, within the school. And I think they were just like, you know what, let's get this kid going, you know? So I did graduate high school. You know, I didn't go to college or anything like that right after high school. I went straight to work and, you know, without having any, at that point I was grown, you know, I was my own man and I just went straight to work, and that's where things really took off, you know.
You think if you went to college, you would have avoided everything that is about to happen?
Maybe I wouldn't have avoided it, but I don't think it would have taken the turn that it did. Like, with the substances that I was using and with, like, because college, there's a lot of partying. There's a lot of shenanigans that goes on. But, you know, if it's, I'm not too sure because, you know, for me, anything that I like, I end up I used to get addicted to. Like, it didn't matter. First time I smoked pot, first time I did this, that. It all was, I needed it, you know? And I don't know, you know, but one thing I do know is that, like I was saying, like, you know, there's a reason I didn't. To be honest, if I did say, hey, let's go to college, I probably would have ended up wasting $100,000 going to school, because I'm not a book guy. You know, I've always been good with my hands, working, and, you know, now I apply, you know, all that. Like, I apply everything I've learned, like, while I was out on the street, but I do it in an ethical, legal way. You know, now I try to learn business. I try to grow as a person. Like, I'm very into self-development and, you know, getting other people through their struggles too.
Yeah.
You know?
So walk me through the low points. What happens right after that? Like the lowest, how low does it go?
It gets bad, man. So I went to Florida in 2012. I went to Florida for my first real treatment center. I went out to rehab, and you know, I went out there. I did well for like 45 days. I was ready to come home, so I came home. Within the matter of a month, I slipped up here and then went back down to Florida. I was supposed to be there for 30 days. It ended up being 5 years. While I was in Florida, that was the first time I started, you know, IVing substances. And that's where, like, you know, my addiction progressed massively. I wasn't at an all-time low yet, but that was where, like, you know, I learned all the stuff all the things I said I was never going to do. It ended up happening in Florida. I ended up meeting a girl in Florida.
It always starts with a girl.
Always starts with a girl, bro. Well, so I ended up meeting a girl, which now is my daughter's mother. And, you know, I'm very grateful for her for giving me the opportunity to be a father. I'm a dad. You know, I have an 8-year-old daughter that keeps me going every day. She's literally the most perfect thing in the world to me. But that also was very difficult at the same time, because she got pregnant. We were both in Florida for around. She went down there as well for rehab. I met her out there, so she's in recovery. I'm in recovery. She ended up getting pregnant, and after being out there for 5 years, we moved back up our way so our parents could be involved and the grandparents could be there. You know, we were excited, and things didn't work out. You know, I had a different vision. She had different stuff that she wanted to accomplish in life, so we ended up going separate ways, but we co-parent for my daughter. And that is when things started getting really bad for me, because I moved to New Jersey, because she's originally from New Jersey. So I moved to New Jersey in hopes, you know, I'll be closer to my daughter. And, you know, Newark, New Jersey specifically, ended up being a place that took a piece of me, you know, like, you know, it was a very, very vicious place, and I didn't know anything about it. And, you know, I remember I just heard about Newark, you know, I've heard people talking about it. I've seen stuff about it on TV. One day I was like, you know what? I'm going to go get something, you know, and I went to Newark and I found it immediately, because it's all over the place. And that moment is where things change, like, forever, like, for the good, you know. And I ended up, you know, back and forth to Newark for a while, and eventually, after like a few months of going there, I ended up parking my car. I had a crappy old Jeep, you know. I ended up parking it down there, and I ended up homeless out there for the next 9 months, with a terrible habit, you know. And, you know, Newark isn't a place that somebody like me belongs, you know. I mean, you know, I mean, I'll just be transparent, you know, I'm a white kid in a mainly, you know, primarily black neighborhood, and I had a very serious problem at that point, you know, and I put myself in a lot of dangerous situations, to say the least. You know, I've had guns held up to my chest for $5. You know, I've had crooked cops drive me around at 2 a.m. and beat the shit out of me. And, there's been more stuff that I could probably really get into right now. But, I actually, when I was first out there, I met a guy, another homeless guy. His name was Quills. Well, he went by Quills. And Quills was old timer. He was probably like 65 years old. He's been homeless for like, 30 years. This guy was like, an OG, but one of the nicest, kind-hearted people that I think I've met in that city, and he ended up like taking me under his wing and like, kind of like in a way like protecting me, making sure that, nobody was trying to get me. And, we just rocked together. We hung out, we did our stuff together. We looked out for each other when I didn't have something and he did. And, and I'll never forget, we were sitting behind a nasty abandoned building. And we were sitting on like 2 milk crates, just sitting there, shooting the shit. And he looked at me and he was like, Mills. He used to call me Mills. And he goes, Mills, are you really going to do this Newark thing? And I was like, and I didn't like comprehend what he meant right away. But then I like thought about it and I'm like, this place is a trap. Like when you're there, it's so crazy, but like, it's not even the drug. It's like somehow you just get stuck. Like Kensington is the same way. I'm sure you're familiar with Kensington, but people go out there and a decade goes by. And it's not just mainly because of the drugs, but I think it's because, a person like me, even though like I'm not from there, it's so populated with other addicts and alcoholics, and like I fit right in, like I blend right into the streets. I felt comfortable in my own skin for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
And
it became your safe space, even though it wasn't a safe spot.
Dude, you couldn't have said it better. Like that was home, like, in a way, like everybody knew me, they were familiar with me. And, believe it or not, like I actually felt, you nailed it. I felt in a way like that was my peace. That was my freedom. Being out there, no rules, anything goes,
What was your relationship with your parents at that time? And could you have reached out to them to get out of that situation?
So my parents, at that time, unfortunately, like, I used to, I would call them I'd check in with them every single day. My dad would every now and then, here's $20, like, be safe today. Like, I was a master manipulator back then. I used to say, oh, like, I'm about to go kick in a door. I need money, blah, 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 and to prevent me going to prison or something like that, my dad would be like, all right, here's $20. But, at that point, my parents wanted nothing more than to see me get better, but they knew that I needed to want it. I couldn't just like, I can't do it for them. I can't do it for anybody, unfortunately. So, there were times where my dad was like, hey, come home, we'll cook dinner, you'll have a warm place to stay for the night. And I wouldn't accept it, because then I'd be an hour and a half away from, my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I did that for a long time. There was times where he would drive out there and, loop around trying to find me. And he found me a couple times, literally, in the city of Newark.
What you're describing right now, there's so many, parents, siblings, friends that have individuals, their daughters,
Yes.
Their sons in these situations. As a former addict yourself who has recovered and was in that situation, what advice could you give to those people on how they could save their loved one that was in your position? Nowadays, I deal with parents on a daily basis, like trying to help their children find resources or whatever it may be. And a lot of parents don't realize how much of a negative impact they're having on their children. All they want to do is help, but realistically what they're doing is almost like just allowing their children to continue to use. Like it's very, enabling is a big thing. And, I had a situation recently where,
this mother was so fearful of her son, that, she'd be giving him like $400 a day. Like, it was very heartbreaking to see. But, as parents, this, like, when a son or a daughter is struggling with an addiction, the whole family needs to heal. It's not just the kid, like the children that need to go to, the kids go to rehab. And, I think the family needs to learn, how to say no and how to, like let go. And that's extremely hard because as a parent, you don't want to see your child suffer. You don't want to see your kid out there doing the wrong thing. But what I can say is that, in order for somebody to get better, they need to hit their bottom. Like they need to be at a point of desperation. And the longer you continue to feed, the nonsense, like give your kids money, do this, do that, the longer it's going to take for them to get to a desperate place where they actually are willing to get help, and like I said, I know that's hard, but, sometimes, a mother and father, the best thing they could do, and it's painful to watch and it's not easy, but the best thing you could do is, allow your kids to, because you're not going to get better if you don't want to. Like I've been to, like I said, 44 programs, probably 25 out of that 44, I was going into rehab for somebody else. My mother needed me, she wanted me to get better, whatever. But until I wanted it for myself, nothing changed, because it's an internal conflict. It's not, it's something that over time you're battling within yourself.
Yeah.
And, it's scary though for parents because it's like, right now I could say, oh yeah, like don't enable your kid, don't give them any money, don't do anything. Like don't do anything that's going to contribute to their addiction. But as a parent, their kids are the most important thing in the planet for them, and they'd rather not see their kids go to prison or parents let their kids use at the house because at least they know they're safe. But that's not really helping anything. That's just prolonging what's inevitable.
Yeah, a lot of addicts also don't realize in the moment, and people that are committing crime that end up in jail, they don't realize the people they're hurting around them, friends, family, whoever. How did it make you feel when you came to terms and realized how many people you hurt along your journey?
Oh man, it's crazy because now being a parent, I look back on what I put my mother through and what I put my father through, and I'm genuinely, I do not think there's anything I can do to like completely fix it. The only thing I could do to like put them at ease is to continue to do good for myself and to continue to be the son that I am and the father I am to my daughter. Like I, for parents out there that are, dealing with this, man, like it's, they might as well be battling an addiction as well, with the amount of pain, the sleepless nights, oh my God, every time your phone rings, you're terrified because you're worried that it's going to be that call, and I, to this day, I help my mother and father out whenever I can. And, I, for years, didn't realize how much I used to think I was just hurting myself, like, but it is, it does a lot to the family dynamic. And, I think, my dad saw things and has experienced things because of my addiction that he probably would have never experienced in his lifetime. You know what I mean? But because he was my father, he wanted to be there with me and try to keep me safe. Like, unfortunately, he had to witness that stuff, and I'm forever grateful for him sticking by my side. But, as far as that goes, man, like, we don't realize the damage we're doing while we're in it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And the best thing you could do is to, like, the best gift any parent could receive is for you to get better, Like, what more could any parent want if it's something they've been battling for years or even just a few months? It's taxing, to say the least.
So, as a homeless addict in Jersey, walk me through a day in the life. Like, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, I want to know what you're eating, how you're making money, if anything, how civilians are treating you,
Yeah.
what that experience is like.
So a lot of the times there wasn't much sleep for me. You know, every now and then I'd catch maybe like a couple hours. I'd find a nice little spot to bunk up in an abandoned building. But, you know, when you're out there, you're on guard a lot, you know, and you don't want to just rest somewhere. It's very risky. So for me, I would kind of just get maybe an hour or two wherever I could. You know, whether it was under Integrity House, there was like a little stairwell. There's a rehab in Jersey. It's called Integrity House, and there's like a little stairwell. And it's literally like a mud pit down there. But I used to stay down there, for, you know, sleep for a couple hours, come back out. First thing in the morning, usually my clothes were damp, they were wet. I'd go to the laundromat up the street, which was, you know, coincidentally right where all the dealers hung out. And I would go in there, I'd dry my clothes off at the laundromat, 25 cents at the time. I would put my stuff in the dryer, get my stuff, you know, a little bit not as damp, and then I'd come out and start the hustle, man. You know, I'd be running around, bartering, you know, boosting at that point. You know, we used to pretty much do anything I can for a few bucks to get a bag. You know, a big thing for me, I was very crafty. You know, I was very savvy, you know, and I would even go and like knock on doors at one point, like, and be like, hey, I'll clean up your whole entire yard for 15 bucks. Like, I'll, you know, whatever, I'll do any work around the house you need done. I can take care of it for a few bucks. And like, I did that for a while, but a lot of people weren't comfortable with it because I didn't look great. You know, I was baggy sweatpants, same sweater for weeks. And, you know, but a big thing was pretty much that everybody kind of kept up with was boosting and, you know, begging, you know, sitting at the end of the drive-thrus, asking, making up this elaborate story. And I used to have my ID. I never forget. I used to have my ID and say, oh, like, I've been stuck out here. You know, I just need a few bucks to catch the bus and go back to New York, blah, blah, blah. You know, I was at that point, you know, I was pretty young. I mean, I was 26, 27 years old, and I definitely was in the wrong neighborhood, and a lot of people knew that. So in a way, like, you know, a lot of older people would look out and stuff, but there has been times, man, where, you know, I'll never forget, I was at the end of the drive-thru one day on Broad Street, and, you know, I was asking people for their change and whatnot, and a woman in a red Porsche SUV came through the drive-thru. She saw me, and the look of terror on her face, like, she looked petrified. Because, like, you know, I mean, and when I mean petrified, like, I'm not a scary person, but when I'm under the influence on coke and all different types of stuff, I probably looked all crazy. You know, my hair was all grown out, my facial hair, I had pick marks all over my face. And, you know, the look of fear in her face, like, I'll never forget that day, actually, because, you know, and then as she creeped up past me and I'm like trying to wave her down and get her to roll down her window, she like gets to the right where the street meets the end of the drive-thru, and she rolls down her window and says, "Get a job, bum." You know, this old lady in a Porsche. And I'm like, you know, and at that moment I was like, man, like, what has happened to me? Like, at one point, like, you know, listen, I come from a good home. You know, I never really like went without growing up. Like, we weren't wealthy, but we weren't poor. And here I am, you know, wearing a size 8.5 shoe. I'm a size 10.5, you know, and I had the same sweat outfit on for 9-10 weeks at a time.
What about hygiene? Are you brushing your teeth? Are you taking a shower? What does that look like?
Whenever the opportunity would present itself, of course, but it didn't present itself often. So I used to actually go to the Newark airport. The bus would go right there. It's literally like 5 minutes from like the ghetto where I used to hang out. And I'd go to the Newark airport, and they would allow us to sleep in the airport. They would allow us to use the bathrooms and get ourselves cleaned up. So I would try to get to the airport like once every 2 to 3 days, you know, at least. But there were times where, you know, before I knew about the airport and all that, like there were times where I went weeks without taking care of myself, you know, and, you know, there's been times where I've gone 7 days without eating a bite of food, or, you know, even there was a couple times where I was awake for 6, 7 days at a time. And that's a scary feeling, man, because you start losing like the sense of reality, you know, you start getting like reality isn't necessarily what it normally is.
Is it like what they talk about with meth monsters and things like that?
Similar, very similar. I mean, you know, when you're awake, your body's exhausted, but your brain is like, I was like running on jet fuel for 7 days at a time, and my body was exhausted, but my brain was like, bum, 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 going, going, going. So, you know, you start getting to a point where paranoia comes. And then, you know, once the paranoia comes, then that's followed by like, everybody's out to get you. You know, oh, that's every car, you just saw the same car 5 times. You think they're coming to get you. Like, you know, it's a very, very difficult and sad way to live.
What are some crazy things you're seeing other homeless people doing around you?
Dude.
Maybe like the craziest thing you saw.
I got some. So I'll give you a few. So there in Newark, there's there are buildings, and, you know, you knock on the door, the doorman, who's like the doorman, the dealers will pay the doorman like a bundle a day or whatever, a couple bags a day to watch the door to make sure the cops aren't coming. These are dope holes, you know? So you knock on the doorman lets you in, the dealer serves you, and then you leave, you know, and go on with your day. There was a guy with no arms and no legs, and this guy was addicted to crack cocaine and heroin. He had no arms and no legs. So he literally would, with no arms and no legs, you know, be able to fix up his stuff, somehow do his stuff. Like, you know, I've seen, unfortunately, a gentleman get shot. My father was there for that one. You know, a young kid, a 17-year-old kid, get shot out there. And, you know, a white Jeep, we heard tires screeching. We were at a McDonald's. We heard tires screeching, and then a white Jeep comes flying by, and all of a sudden it was like a barrage of just, you know, clink, 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 clink. You hear the, you know, bullets bouncing off shit. My dad was sitting in the car, 2 cars down from where my dad was sitting. The back window got blown out and went through the driver seat. So, mind you, like, my dad, this is all like, my dad's like terrified, you know, he's a grown man now, and he hasn't seen anything like this in his lifetime. And that's like what I was referring to before about him not having seen certain things in his life that he never should have to see. But, you know, pregnant women crawling up and down the stairs thinking they dropped a piece of coke, like literally, you know, women that are 9 months pregnant, 10 months pregnant, you know, selling their bodies. And it's a vicious cycle out there, man.
Are they like having sex with each other, the homeless people? Is there like a hookup culture?
Not really. No, it's not. I mean, I'm sure there are. I mean, I that's like the last thing that I wanted to do while I was out there. Like, I didn't want nothing but just what I was out there doing, my drugs. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, it's definitely a thing. You know, there's a lot of, you know, prostitutes and stuff like that. And people have their needs. But, I mean, for me, man, you know, in Newark, like, you know, HIV is a very serious thing out there. Hep C, like it's a city riddled with needles and drugs and all types of stuff.
Is it like what we see in TV and movies where like cops will come to homeless people to get information or tips, see if they've seen anything?
Out there, man, the cops are ruthless. Like, they're not going to go to the homeless. They're going to find, you know, anybody they can and yoke them up and throw them in the back of the car and literally threaten to knock all their teeth out and say, hey, you know, if you don't, you know, where did you get your shit? Oh, I don't know where I got it. It was some random guy. They'll say bullshit, you know, and then literally they will knock your teeth out. Like, it's almost like, you know, you don't think that type of stuff exists until you're in a city like that, You know what I mean? Because I've seen it. I've been through it. You know, there was one time, you know, I wasn't even doing nothing wrong. I was driving, and a couple detectives were driving towards me. They put their spotlight right in my face while I'm driving. They flip around. I did have stuff on me, and, you know, they yanked me out of the car, threw me in the back of their car, towed my car, took my shit, literally drove me around for hours, just threatening me, you know, and then eventually, you know, they dragged me out of it because I was mouthing off to them and I was being a jerk, and you know, they dragged me out of the car and beat my ass, you know, right on the side of the street. It was like almost 3 a.m. I had no clue where I was, and you know, they even took one of my shoes. You know, they don't care.
That's wild.
I know.
Now, if we ran your record today, do you have any arrests or any type of
but nothing substantial. I have quite a few different like possession things. I've had three DUIs. Thankfully, only one of them stuck.
3 DUIs.
3 DUIs.
For alcohol or for drugs?
All drugs. And all of them, I wasn't even driving. Most of the time, I had overdosed in the car, and the police show up.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So you never went to jail like for a long period or anything. Your jail was kind of like the rehab facilities.
Correct. That was my institution.
So before we get to the rehabs,
yeah,
give me the worst time where you were, or you nearly succumbed to an overdose.
Well, so full transparency, and this is like it's a tough thing for me to talk about, but I'm actually okay nowadays. But, you know, I've been pronounced unalive 3 times. One time in Waterbury, Connecticut, one time in Newark, and one time in Brewster. You know, there's been over 20 overdoses that I've had. But those 3 are the ones that like I will never forget, you know, and 2 of them, it was just black. Like I didn't know what had happened until the EMTs, you know, woke me up and they're like, he's back. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? My ears are bleeding. My nose is bleeding. And, you know, I'd just been Narcan, so I'm very out of it. I feel sick. But the one time, this is a wild story. At this point, you know, it was like one of the times where I was in and out of these facilities. You know, I had like 30 days sober. I had dropped my daughter off in Jersey, and on my way home, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get 1 bag. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to hold on to it. I get it. I drive all the way back to Brewster. You know, I pulled into the Burger King parking lot on Route 22. And weirdly, my neighbor, who's a EMT, like was in the parking lot, and he came up to my car. He's like, hey, Will, what's going on, man? What are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I'm just hanging out, getting ready to leave. He's like, all right, man, I'll see you later. I ended up doing not even a quarter of what was in this bag. Like it was literally a couple grains of salt, you know? I immediately did it. I put my car in drive, and I get onto the main road, and that's all I could remember, right? Lights out. So my car thankfully rolled to a stop in the middle of this main road, Route 22. This is where it gets wild. So I have, you know, 2 very good friends I grew up with. One of them had saw my car at the time. I had an orange WRX, you know, you can't miss it. It was a bright orange car. And so he is in the car with his mother, and I'm up here, and he's beeping the horn, like messing with me, and I was stopped in the middle of the road. He's like, you know, he's probably thinking like, what the hell's going on? He thought I was on my phone because my head was down. So eventually, you know, he pulls up behind me real close. He's holding the horn, like messing with me, yelling out the window. And I didn't know any of this. I was unconscious. He gets out of the car and realized, this is like one of my best friends, gets out of the car and realized what was going on. And literally, immediately he called 911. And, when I came to, I looked to my right. Like, after the EMTs got there, they Narcaned me. I came to, and I looked to my right, and I saw him, his mother, and my other best friend standing on the side of the road, all crying. And I'm like, whoa, like, what is happening? You know what I mean? Like, divine intervention, my best friend, like, found me overdosed in the middle of the fucking, like, what are the chance, for him to be pulling up on Route 22, which is like a very busy road, for him to be pulling up, see my car, know that something's wrong. He said he felt like something was wrong. So he gets out, he called 911. He was hitting me in the chest, trying to keep me. And, he saved my life that day by calling the ambulance and being there. If it wasn't for him, I bet you people would have just drove around me. Everybody would have kept driving around me.
Are you still friends with him to this day?
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
if that ambulance didn't have Narcan, would you have lived?
I don't think so. No, definitely not.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's some states that it's not mandated
Correct.
to carry it.
I think it's getting a lot more, nowadays you don't even need a prescription for it. You could go into any pharmacy and get it pretty much. But yeah, man, that was one of the ones where weird stuff was happening while I was unconscious. Like, I had like, I guess you could say like an outer body type of deal, like situation where I literally was like, like an aerial view of everything that was happening. And then, when I woke up, I was like back in my car, I was in my seat. And then when I got in the ambulance and they took me to the hospital, the same thing happened. I must have went unconscious again because the Narcan wears off, and that's what's dangerous, man, is, Narcan can wear off and you can fall back into your overdose. And I was in the ambulance, and then all of a sudden I remember saying, like, I'm really tired. And then I closed my eyes again. And next thing I know, I was like, aerial view, like looking at the ambulance driving. And I kept hearing, like, we lost them. And then out of nowhere, boom, I'm back in. It was very weird. So, a lot of people wonder what happens, like, I believe that something does happen for sure when people, cross over. There's something. I don't know what, because thankfully it wasn't my time. But
did you continue to use after this?
After that, yes, I did.
Why do you think you continued even after going through that experience?
Well, so when it comes to this stuff, I always tell people, like, willpower, it doesn't exist when you're struggling with an addiction. Like, if you don't get help, there's no shot that you're just going to get better. Like, it really does take work. Like, addiction, it's a chemical imbalance of the brain that is caused from the narcotics, and without those chemicals being stabilized in your brain, the chances of success are slim to none, and to be honest, like, a lot of places, like these facilities that I've been to in the past, they don't necessarily fix the problem. It's more of just you're there for 30 days, you dry out, you have some sober time under your belt, and then they send you on your way. And, for me, it was life or death. It wasn't like a joke. And unfortunately, I had good insurance, so I was taken advantage of by a lot of different places. During this time, there was a lot of bad stuff going on in South Florida with insurance fraud and all types of stuff with rehabs back in the day. They call it body brokering, and there were people that used to get paid to go to rehab, and there were facilities getting kickbacks for clients going to rehab. And, a 19-year-old kid that doesn't necessarily want to get sober you know, a marketer comes up to him and says, hey, I'll give you $1,000, go get high and go to this rehab, of course he's going to do it, you know? So, you know, nowadays that stuff doesn't really exist the way it used to, but that's why, you know, we're doing what we're doing. Me and my partner, we're opening up this rehab is because, man, like, you know, everybody says, oh, we're going to be different, you know, we're going to do something different. Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna do something different, and it's because I've learned everything that doesn't work, you know? Through my experience, like, I can't even imagine the amount of money that has gone into trying to keep me alive, you know? And if I could prevent that for, you know, another family, I'm going to. Like, you know, we're humans. People unfortunately have struggles, you know? I mean, people end up taking the wrong path, and I just don't believe that, like, nobody's too far gone. Nobody. And there's a lot of people that say, like, oh, I've been using for 20, 30 years, I can't go. That's bullshit, you know? If you want it bad enough, you will get it. Anything in life.
So these rehabs were paying you personally?
The rehabs weren't. So, like, how it used to work is, and I tried to steer clear of this because I already knew what time it was. It's not a good thing. People were dying left and right. So marketers would, you know, go around and find vulnerable addicts and alcoholics. You know, they would say, hey, are you looking to go to rehab? And, hey, I can give you $2,000 to stay for 30 days. These are marketers, so they're like subcontractors, pretty much.
Who are getting a piece of the pie from the rehabs?
Correct.
Wow. That's kind of like private prisons
Yep.
and whatnot with the state, and they're getting paid per each person,
Yep.
profiting off of another man's downfall.
And, dude, I at one point or another for about 4 years was brokered through South Florida. You know, my family was manipulated. I was manipulated into, you know, I was sold a dream for so many years. Like, hey, you know, this place has a pool. This place is going to help you. This is what's best for you. And then none of it was true. It's just, you know, everybody was looking for a paycheck. And, you know, I've seen a lot of people die because, you know, they got that $2,000 for going to detox, and then, you know, and they end up going out on a run that takes their life, you know, their lives.
Now, you are a frequent flyer at these rehab facilities.
Yes. Yeah.
What are these facilities like? Give us like a summary of what you can expect when you go in.
Course.
Is it kind of like a prison or a jail?
So the model, I've been to a lot of different types because there's a ton of different types, but, you know, there's like the bigger, more commercial programs that have, you know, 50 to 100 beds. And then there's the individualized programs that have only 6 beds, which is honestly what worked for me. You know, I went to an individualized program on my 44th time, and it changed my life forever. So, you know, these programs that you go to, like, you know, the ones you go on Google, you type in best rehab in the country, and, you know, they pay for their clicks, you know, so they'll get to the top of the Google list. You know, you'll go to the rehab, they'll fly you out, or, you know, you may have to pay for your flight, whatever. They'll get you to the rehab. You get there, you do an intake, which is, you know, they strip you. They'll make sure you don't have anything on you. And then, you know, they'll get you medicated and whatnot. And then they'll send you to your room. But these by far are nothing at all close to jail. A lot of them are very cushy and luxurious nowadays. But to be honest, it's more of like a damn high school reunion for a lot of like the bigger places. Because, I mean, imagine this. Imagine, you know, maybe 50 kids, all between the ages of, let's say, you know, 18 to 28 years old, all struggling with addiction and mental health issues. It's co-ed, and everybody's trying to get their lives back together at the same time. It's like one big, you know, it gets a little hectic, but I'll tell you what, you know, a lot of these places will do anything for, if you're willing to do the work, they will do anything it takes to help you. And, you know, after going to so many, I realized that it's very hard to get better in a setting where, let's say, there's 50 clients and only 2 therapists. That's why when I went to treatment for the last time, I went to a small, more individualized program. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was ran out of a house. It's licensed, everything, real deal facility, but it only had 6 clients. And I was able to get, one-on-one help. They offer equine therapy, which is like going down to the horse farms and walking with the horses. They have pools usually. They bring you to the gym 2 days a week or whatever it may be. You're usually in group around 8 hours a day. So, you wake up, eat your breakfast, and it's group time. The weekends, usually, like most facilities, will bring you on like an outing. And, whether it's the beach, whether it's to a movie, whatever, just to kind of get you out and make you feel like you're not confined,
Any cell phone usage or no?
So there are facilities out there that allow it. I think it's a terrible idea to allow somebody to have it on them. I think most places allow you to access it, to make your 15-minute phone call at night to your wife, to your family. But, I think having it on you full time, it's a liability, number one, because nowadays you could order alcohol off Uber Eats.
Yeah.
And, and you could also, call a local dealer. You could, so a lot of places do monitor it, and it's very limited. Some places don't allow it at all. But, I do think it's important, though, to, in my opinion, like that little 15-minute phone call at night really kept me going. You know what I mean? It kept me motivated and allowed me to focus on why I was there.
And you had your daughter at this point, too.
Yep. Last time I went to treatment, she was probably, I think she was 3 years old.
She gave you something to live for?
Dude, if it wasn't for her, 100% I wouldn't be here. Like, I didn't have a purpose until, and it wasn't always, I think it's like, I'm so stubborn to the point where I was like, dude, I can't let another man raise my kid. You know what I mean? And this little girl deserves the world. So, there was a lot of times where I was having a hard time, I would slip, but I would immediately go right back to rehab or immediately seek some sort of help, because at that point I was a father. I didn't have I couldn't disappear for a month or two. You know what I mean? I couldn't just go on a run and possibly never come back. My daughter, one day she'll understand, but she truly saved my life.
Do you think you'll ever sit down with her and have this conversation with her?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how will you make sure that she doesn't follow down? Because as you said, addiction runs in the family.
Genetics.
Yeah, genetics. How do you make sure that doesn't happen to her?
I'll tell you what, man. I think a big part of like parenting is, you tell a kid not to do something, like the more you hammer, hey, don't do this, like the more somebody's going to want to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, as kids, naturally, like whenever my mother told me not to do something, that's usually the thing I did. So I'm a very transparent person. I believe that my daughter knows what I do for a living. She knows that I help people that are sick, that are struggling and maybe don't have that don't know what they want with life. But when that time comes, for me, the one thing I wish I had was full transparency, growing up, like from my family. Like, we didn't sit down and talk about like the dangers of drugs and alcohol. Like, it wasn't something that like, everybody in my family like warned us about, So for me, I mean, I think it's important to be transparent, and I think there's a way to go about everything. But, I don't think there's anything wrong with her knowing the truth eventually, because then she'll know she can come to me with whatever. I'm not going to be, and for me, like yelling or being angry isn't going to solve anything. Life's about finding solution, and I really believe that, if a kid is struggling by screaming and reprimanding them, like, that's not really necessarily going to help anything. You know, you got to have like a healthy boundary with how you, deliver your message to somebody, you know, and especially a kid.
Absolutely. What have been some triggers for you after getting clean, and what have you done to overcome those triggers?
So, believe it or not, the last, I'll have 4 years in December, but nowadays, my first 6 months, I experienced like triggers, little stuff like I would watch a show that would, set off something in my mind. And, I always look at it like this, like feelings are visitors. They come and they go. I always say that because a trigger, like, if you get into the science of it, maximum 15 to 30 minutes, you're going to have cravings, right? If you can get through that craving, the next one is not going to be as difficult to get through. A lot of people give up before the miracle happens. Like, things really do get better. Like, nowadays, like, I've gone on interventions and have seen piles of drugs in front of. I've seen people overdosed. I've had to save lives sober. Like now I don't get triggered. I just feel more, it like makes me sick, to my stomach now because, I have a healthy fear of like the drugs, but I'm also like aware of like, you got to respect it in a way because it's more, I'm aware of how powerful it is and how quickly things could change,
Yeah. How do you think we get that message out to the youngsters before they start trying it to know how powerful it really is? Because these individuals don't know until they try it. And then once they try it, it's too late.
Too late. You're 100%
How do we
right.
change that?
Well, I think for myself, like I could speak on what I can do is just do my best to try to spread awareness. I mean, I think a lot of people nowadays, like a big issue is, the way people are being educated isn't necessarily helping. It's like more of a joke. Like you remember in school, did you guys have DARE?
Yeah, we had DARE, of course, yeah.
Like, I feel like that was kind of like, not a single person was like, oh my God, that's making me not want to go use. You know what I mean? Like, I think, if somebody like at a younger age, somebody like myself or, somebody that has that life experience going into schools, speaking to these kids like we're friends, instead of more of it being like, hey, don't do this. It's better off to spread the awareness of what this could be, like, hey, nobody's immune to this. If you consistently do this, no matter what, you're going to end up sick. You're going to end up physically addicted. And there's a good chance that you may be suffering for the next God knows how many years because addiction is a real thing, So that's actually something where me and my partner, my best friend, Connor, we've really been trying to like get into schools and talk with these kids and, the more people we could get a message out to, the better.
Yeah, tell us about what you do now for work and what you're creating.
So the last few months, I stepped away from a job at a treatment facility that I was with for quite a while. But me and my best friend Connor, we grew up together. We used together for years, and we got sober together. He's got 10 years sober. I'll have 4 years in December. We've worked for 2 or 3 different facilities together. He has a large presence on TikTok as well. So, a lot of work we do is through social media. And we've realized, like, if we want to get something done right, if we want to help these people right, we got to do it ourselves. Like, a lot of programs out there that we've worked for or that we've been affiliated with, we just believe that this could be done a lot better than it's being done. Money isn't everything. And I feel that a lot of programs, as they grow, they lose sight of what's important, and that's the client, the client's experience. And, we decided that we were going to open up our own treatment facility in Southern California. It's a 6-bed detox residential. So we're going to be like a 28, 30-day stay. It's called California Wellness, and it's our baby. It's where we're going to We're going to help as many people as we can. And we're going to keep our integrity doing that. You know, we're going to keep our eyes on the fact that we have the power to save lives now, you know, and, you know, a lot of people, I think, experience a little bit of success and their values change, you know, their lifestyle changes. And for me, I mean, this was the only thing that has kept me sober, was helping other addicts and alcoholics.
You developed a purpose through your own struggles.
Exactly. And not just that, but like to me, all my struggles, they're an asset now. Like
on-the-job training.
Dude, let me tell you, man, there's nothing anybody could tell me that would like, you know, shock me or make me think of you a certain way. Like I've seen it all and I've been through it all, you know, and in a way I'm proud of who I am. You know, I don't ever feel embarrassed to talk about my past, or maybe even to, you know, to share some of these, you know, war stories because, you know, although it's hard to hear and some of it was painful, but I really believe that I take a lesson with me from every single thing that happens in my life. You know, even like stuff like this, like I'm normally, I have a difficult time like sharing my story. I get anxious, but for whatever reason, it's not up to me. Like I feel like the universe, whatever it is out there, like this is my purpose. And if I don't, I could save a life today. You know, somebody could relate to me, and for all I know, this is what gets them, makes them decide to get help. You know, if I could do it, maybe they can do it, you know?
Absolutely. If you could go back to your teenage self right after that accident, when you're starting to dabble in substance use, what would you say to that person? What advice would you give him?
I would probably say, hang on tight and never give up, because there were a few points, man, where I wanted to give up, you know, like as time went on, it got worse and worse, but at a very young age, man, I was exhausted, you know, and for people out there right now that might be battling this, like, I can guarantee you that they feel that there is no way out, you know, that this is what it is. This is going to be their lives until the drugs take them, or they do something that puts them in prison for life, or they die of an overdose. But 100%, there is a way out. The only thing you need to do is literally allow somebody else that has gotten through what you're struggling with, let them take charge. You don't know shit, you know? And until I let go of like what I thought I knew, nothing changed. I needed to literally let somebody, you know, show me the path, because, you know, I don't know. I didn't even know who I was. You know what I mean? Like, if I didn't have the support and the people in my life that did help me, no shot I'd be here. You know, it's scary, man, because a lot of people don't think like, oh, I can't tell my parents, right? That's a big thing I get every day on social media. People, how do I get sober without needing to go to rehab or detox, or telling my family? Well, here's the thing. Like, the first thing that you can't do is keep it a secret. Keeping, like they say, our secrets keep us sick, you know? And if you're off the rip, like trying to keep it a secret and do it on your own, the chances of success are like nothing.
And you know, it's hard to ask for help sometimes.
Oh.
It's embarrassing. It's hard. It takes a lot.
100%.
But asking for help can be the change you need in your life too.
Well, it doesn't always have to be painful to ask for help. You know, it's just, you got to set aside your pride. And sometimes, man, like, it's best doing it with somebody, you know, like somebody that you can trust, that you can lean on, to go to your partner or your spouse, whatever it is, and say, hey, I'm having some struggles. Like, you know, a lot of people have the fear of the unknown. Like, everybody makes it up to be worse than it's going to be. Like, you know, we always make oh my God, it's going to go this way. We have this whole vision in our head on what's going to happen, and it never ends up happening that way. you know?
Well, that's how it is in like relationships and, you know, breakups and whatnot. That fear of not knowing if the person's ever going to talk to you again or anything like that. It's that unknown feeling.
Yep.
But Will, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to seeing more of you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you know, we wish you the best. We'll plug in all your information in the descriptions for people to reach out.
Awesome.
And you definitely have a book in you. You might want to think about that too.
You're not the first person that said that.
Yeah,
so.
get the wheels churning.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man.
Thank you, brother.